I became interested by hearing my grandmother talk about stories that she'd heard that had happened in the area she grew up in. And part of the time she lived close to Falk. Is that how you say it? Is
I
it
think
Falk?
so. I think that's how
Okay.
you pronounce it.
She had heard stories about Bigfoot back then, but then because I'd heard those stories, when the movie about I forgot what it was called. It was about the Falk monster, but um, the old one, the old movie.
The old
It
one
came
that
out
came
to the
out.
theater anyway,
Yeah.
and so I went to that movie, and then I really was interested. Never went out looking or anything like that. It was just that I was interested in the story because my grandmother had told me things she'd heard that were supposedly real that had happened, and I believed it when I saw that movie. So
Now, did your grandmother actually have any sightings herself or knew people that
no,
had sightings? Did she know people?
not that I remember her ever saying.
What did she tell you? What was she expressing to you about the
I
Bigfoot?
can't remember the stories themselves, the details of them, just little things about people having had sightings in that area. I really can't remember.
Okay. Yeah. So you became interested in that way. And so did you believe that Bigfoot was real at that point? What was your thoughts
Yes,
on that?
I did. And then also I ended up seeing, I saw the famous, film of the Bigfoot out in in California. Um, I can't even remember their names.
The Patty film, the
Yeah, the Patty
Patterson-Gimlin
film.
video?
Yeah, that I saw that, and I really thought that that was real. I did. I still do. I still believe that was real. I don't believe every picture and every video I've seen and every story I've heard was real, but I believe that that is real.
Well, since those days back when the Sierra Sounds was recorded and when the Patterson-Gimlin film was recorded, so much has changed because, now with, AI and all of the photo digital ability, you can fake stuff very easily today. But back in those days, it was harder to do.
Right. And I just looked at the animal itself on the video, and it looked like a real living being to me. I studied it. I studied the pictures, and it looked real to me. So,
Well, I have to agree, and even the experts I've looked at the Patterson-Gimlin film, the muscle movement would take a lot of weight to put a costume together that would make those muscles move just like authentic heavy muscles. That would be really difficult to do. And also another thing that made me believe in the Patterson-Gimlin film is that if they were going to make a costume of Bigfoot, I don't think they would have made it a female. I think they would have made it a male.
for first of all, I just don't think any men would want to make the Bigfoot a female. I think men would want it to be a male, the macho thing, and then it would be too difficult anyway. But I just don't see a man back in those days putting the first fake but looks good video out there of a female. I just don't see it.
Exactly. And then given the location it was, I mean, everything around the story itself, I mean, it's pretty authentic to me. I just don't think that one was fake. Now today, like you said, I think there's so many things that can be faked, and I think everybody's trying to make a dollar and put stuff out there. But I have to agree with you. I think that was not a fake situation. And the Falk monster itself, too. I know the movie itself was just based on a true story that happened down there, but it was such an unusual story. The man that ended up in the hospital after this this Bigfoot came to their house and was knocking on the doors and windows and things, and that put him in the hospital. And regardless of what did happen, the one thing that was measurable was that he was in panic and his body was in stress because of that. So, he was definitely taken in with some kind of extreme situation that was happening to his body after that. I mean, that was a very frightening thing to him. That was measurable. And anytime we can get that kind of a measurement around an incident like that, I think you just have to question if that could even be faked at all.
I agree.
Yeah. So you went on to did now what age were you when you had these experiences seeing these two films?
Okay, whenever that came out, That was in the 70s, but I don't recall what year it came out or anything. I just remember me and some friends went to the movie.
Do you remember your
And
age? Do you remember about how old you were?
I don't know for sure if somebody else drove us or if one of my friends was driving, because I know there were at least three or four of us that went to it. I know I didn't drive us there, but that means it would have to be, I mean, if somebody else in my class was driving, it would have to be like 70. Let's see, I was 18, 17, 16. It would have to be like 75 when we saw that. But I don't know if that's when it came out because I don't
So,
recall who
so
drove
you
us to the
think
movie.
were you a teenager then?
Yes,
Okay, so you're about those years when you were a teen or so is
yes.
when you saw that. And so did you remain interested in Bigfoot after that or what happened?
Well, I always have been. And let me just say the incident that happened to me, I don't even know that that was Bigfoot.
Hmm.
Um, I'll tell you that story when you want me to, but I don't even know that that was Bigfoot. This, me being interested in Bigfoot had nothing to do with that.
Well, let's
'Cause
go ahead and jump into that story. How old were you and what happened?
well, my brother was the one that drove us out. So my brother would have been, and my brother graduated from high school in 75 and left home. So in May of 75. So it would have to be the spring or fall before that, or possibly, because I don't know if it was spring or fall. I don't think it was summer. I think it was actually fall because the grass that was in front of me when we went there was turning brown or was sort of brown. So I'm going to say it was fall.
So around 1974. So what happened?
Four or three. I'm not sure. I'm
Either
not
way.
positive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
what happened?
My brother had come home one day telling me that a friend of his told him a story about an old monkey woman that guarded this Indian cemetery, a Native American cemetery, that was between my hometown and a small town 9 miles away from us. So, about right in the middle and out in the country off that road. And he said that his friends told him they went out to that cemetery and that this monkey woman jumped out of the trees. I'm smiling because I thought it was a joke, and I still don't know, but that this monkey woman jumped out of the trees and chased them out as if they should not be in that cemetery. And my brother believed it, and my brother said they were scared, and he was scared telling the story. So I thought it was funny. So I said, I would like to go out there and find the old monkey woman, and I just thought it was a joke. And I think he wanted to go too, but he wasn't really that brave about it. He got several other people. I'd say there were probably five of us total. And I don't recall who the other guys were, but a girlfriend of mine came with us. And so we had decided, I think it was, and I'm almost positive that it was after church on a Sunday night. My dad was a preacher and we went to every church service. And so this had to be either Wednesday night or Sunday night, but I think it was a Sunday night because we'd been to church and the teenagers that were going to go, we waited till after church and then all piled into a car or two. It seems to me like it was two cars. I'm not positive. I think we had two cars. And my brother and I believe the other car drove us out to this location. It was I say way, my town was kind of a country town anyway, so there weren't that many bright lights or anything like that. But when you went out on this road, there weren't any lights. So when you got off on just a rare light, say like at a business off to the side of the highway or something. Um, so when we got off that road and went out on this country road towards the cemetery, there was nothing. There were no lights. Who knows? Maybe one or two here and there. Dark though. So they drove us out and there was a church and it was the Indian church that the cemetery belonged to. Excuse me. And we parked the cars and everybody piled out. And there was one street light pole in the middle of the parking lot. And it was a small parking lot and it was just gravel because it was a little bitty country church. So there's this light out there. So there was that one light. Well, the guys all stayed up the cars and smoked a cigarette before we went down. I didn't smoke, and my girlfriend didn't smoke. And we saw where the opening was to go in. We knew the description of where to go for the cemetery. So we saw the opening. So my girlfriend and I walked down there, and there was grass that was about up to here on me. And I'd say the grass was about 5 to 6 foot, maybe not even that far from me. The grass wasn't. The grass was probably 3 foot from me. And then where I could see from the light in the parking lot, I could probably see out a couple more feet, sort of, above the grass. Not too much, just a little bit of light out there. So anyway, we walked down to the opening was to my right between the grass and some trees. And there were trees all in front of me out behind the grass. And it was all wooded. So we walked to the grass line and we were standing there waiting for the guys, and we could hear what sounded like a small, I say small, just an animal. I didn't think it sounded like a big animal, but a small animal maybe walking around, like you'll hear an armadillo or a possum or a raccoon going through the grass. And so I've been around plenty of animals and plenty of woods, and I just told her to be quiet for a second and be quiet so that the animal could come out. I figured eventually it'd come wandering out of the grass and we'd see what it was. And so it kept on rustling in the grass, and we stood there, and we were waiting. And I expected any second now I'll see the armadillo. And all of a sudden, in front of me in the grass, a head popped up. And I could tell it was a head, like it looked like a human head to me. But I couldn't see a face, and I couldn't see if it was an animal. I couldn't see I couldn't see its face. So I could see like a light kind of above where it was, barely from that street light or that pole. And I could see it like around the edges. It looked like hair. That's all I saw. So it came up, popped up, scared the crap out of me. And I think I screamed. I know I made some noise out of the surprise when I saw this head pop up, because I wasn't expecting that. And when I screamed or whatever it was, I did, because I don't recall if it was a scream or just a vocalization of my own. My brother and all the guys came running down because they must have seen it too. But anyway, I was saying there's somebody or whatever. So my brother's running down as fast as he could, and he ran out into the grass and then tried to chase down whoever this was. You could hear him running too. I say them because I think it was a human being or it was possibly a Bigfoot, and I'll tell you that later. But I could hear them running really fast, and the trees and the brush was really thick. It was all really thick in there. So whoever it was just crashing through that brush. And my brother tried to catch up with them, but he never could. So he chased out, several yards, I'd say, but finally just quit because he couldn't get through. He couldn't find them. So when he came back, I told my brother and the other guys, that was a person. I think that was a person. It wasn't an animal. I know it wasn't like a deer I know what animals are shaped like. All I saw was what looked like a head and looked like hair, kind of shaggy hair. As soon as it came up, and it was like he saw me or she, whatever, saw me. I saw that person or whatever it was, and it popped down, and I was just kind of in shock. It wasn't like I was scared of the person was going to get me. It was just that they surprised me. You just don't expect somebody out in the middle of nowhere when you've made this special trip out there, to go to the graveyard. You just don't expect somebody to pop up out of nowhere like that. And as far as I know, there weren't any houses around close. There were houses out on the country road. So I suppose if somebody saw us drive down the road and could have walked up there and walked through the woods, they could have snuck in, I guess. But I don't think whoever it was or whatever it was knew that I was standing there or that my friend was standing there. I think they just heard the people talking up at the cars and that they were going to see what was going on up there. But anyway, after that all happened and it was over and we didn't hear anything else or see anything else, we went about our business and went on down through the opening and followed that opening through to this old cemetery. And we had to have a flashlight because I remember seeing dates on the tombstones, and some were from the 1800s, like the late 1800s, and some were from the early 1900s. We didn't stay that long. We just looked around. It's kind of a small graveyard. We looked around a bit. No monkey woman ever jumped out of the trees. And then we wandered back to the cars, and that's really all I remember about the incident.
Did anyone else in your group see that silhouette that you saw of that being?
I don't recall anybody, I don't recall if my brother said he saw them. I know he chased off, he could hear the person or animal, and he chased off in the direction. I don't recall if he said he saw them, but my girlfriend had to. So like I'd say it was about 2 years ago, or possibly three, I contacted her through Facebook and I asked her, "Do you remember when we did this?" And she said, "Well, I remember going to the cemetery." She said, I went there once or twice, but I don't remember anything else. I said, and I told her what I remembered. I said, "You don't remember any of that?" She said, "I remember being there with you, but I don't remember the details." So I can't tell you about that.
So after that was all over, that group that was out there, you didn't discuss this or really talk about what your experience was?
Not really with them, I don't think so much. But the next day I talked to my mother and I told her what happened. And I told her why we went out there, because we'd heard the story about the old monkey lady, the old monkey woman. And my mom said, well, yeah, because I described that it looked like a person and I saw shaggy hair. And my mom said, well, you probably saw a juvenile, or I don't think she said juvenile. She said, you probably saw a teenager, or I don't know if she said baby or teenager, Bigfoot. And I said, well, why do you say that? Because I hadn't heard any stories about Bigfoot in our hometown or anywhere near our hometown. And I said, why do you say that? And she said, because you said you saw shaggy hair and that it stood up and then it left and ran off. And she said, and that's like the stories that she had heard about Bigfoot. And I said, I really, I did think it was kind of weird. The whole incident was weird. But when she said she thought it might have been a young Bigfoot, I started thinking about it. And then from that moment on, I just thought about that. I'd think and think and think. And then over the years, when I listened to people's stories, and I started listening to YouTube stories like a few years ago when I was working, I'd be listening. And people describe sounds and and behaviors of a Bigfoot and everything. And I thought, well, that would make sense. They pop up to see what we're doing, see me, didn't realize I was there, and take off and run, like the wind. Because I mean, that person or that animal, whatever, was running. But I put a lot of thought into it over the years, and I think it could have been. And what really made me believe that it really could have been is when I started hearing that there were Bigfoot sightings in a park, a national park, a small national park in the town I was talking about, between my hometown and another town. There's a national park in that town, and people have reported sightings. And I didn't know it though when I was a teenager. I didn't know about that. That was I didn't hear about that until I think it was either right before I graduated or right after I graduated high school that I started hearing stories about sightings in that park. And then since then, I've had other people tell me about sightings actually around my hometown itself.
Do you know
Uh,
if the man that reported, or the boy that reported the monkey lady at that cemetery, do you know if he had actually seen anything there?
he said he did. And I don't recall who it was because I wasn't talking to him. My brother talked to him. I'm sure I knew who it was at the time when he told me that this person had told him the story. I'm sure I knew who it was at the time, but I don't remember now who it was. But he said he did. He said he saw the monkey woman.
It
And
would have been
I think
interesting, yeah,
they
to have
call
had
her
a
the old monkey
conversation with him.
woman.
Mhm.
Excuse me?
I said it would have been interesting if you could have had a conversation with him at that time and compared notes.
I know, but at the time it didn't seem important and it seemed silly to me, like I was being silly, is what it felt like. I didn't go around talking to everybody about it or anything. Not that I was afraid, not so much of being afraid of being told I was silly, just I felt silly. So I didn't go around talking about it. And it was such a brief thing. It was like, am I just making up a lot of, am I just making this into a Bigfoot story when it was probably just a kid popping their head up and somebody with hair? I didn't really talk about it much. But since then, on Facebook, I have contacted a few people that I thought might have been who was with us that night, a couple of guys, and neither one of them said that they were with us. So I don't even know who was with us. It wasn't important at the time. We were just out. It was kind of like any of the urban legend stories where people will go out and say, we're going to go find the woolly booger or something like that. Now, later I've been told by people, woolly booger is a name for Bigfoot. Well, I didn't know that either. Supposedly, we had a woolly booger on another road going to another town close by. And that was a place people would go out and say they were going looking for the woolly booger. But I didn't know it might be a Bigfoot, name, woolly booger. I just thought of a little woolly man is what I was thinking of, running around, a little monster. But I knew it wasn't true. I mean, I thought it was a joke, which that might not have been a joke either.
Well,
I
if you
don't.
think about the woolly booger, I mean, oftentimes Bigfoot is known as the booger.
I didn't know that though at the time, so that didn't even occur to me. This is so silly. But the woolly booger name didn't even occur to me that it could be anything to do with Bigfoot until about 3 or 4 years ago. And then I went, oh, people do say booger, the booger. So I thought maybe that was actually not even just an urban legend. Maybe it was true too.
Have you ever checked any of the reporting sites to see if anything in that area has been reported?
Oh yes, I have since. There was not at that cemetery that I'm talking about. The only other person that I know personally, well, no, I know two people that say that they've seen a Bigfoot in that park. There were two people, and that I've actually heard them tell their stories personally. But also, I went on the B, wait,
BFRO?
BFR, yes, that site, and I found it was either one or two reports in that park.
Do you remember what the reports were?
One of them was that a guy was driving through, and when you went through that park, there were a lot of spring-fed creeks through there. So sometimes you'd have to drive, like there would be concrete, but it would have water over it, and you'd have to drive through the water to get to the other side to get back out to the next part of the road. And he was driving around one night in this report and saw somebody, he thought somebody at first, crouched down getting a drink of water. And when he really studied him, he saw that it was a hairy creature drinking water out of the creek. And I think he said he looked at him, that the creature looked at him, but I don't recall that part or not. But it's on that site, that reporting is.
That's a good resource to see if there's anything other activity in an area for sure.
Mhm.
And it does give you more confidence. If there are other people seeing it in the area, you can sometimes believe, that your sighting too, has some more validity because other people are seeing the same things.
Yes. And
So what,
somebody else, and I'm not going to mention who they are because it's their business to mention, but somebody else that had had a sighting in that park um, went to the cemetery that I'm talking about with me in the daytime, and he and another friend of his that are actually they do research Bigfoot. They went along the creek bed because, first of all, that one friend had seen his sighting, his first sighting, and maybe only his first was in that park. So that creek that is by the cemetery, it connects with the creek, some creeks that go up into that park. So he and his friend went out looking for any signs of anything. And he didn't say he found any tracks, but his friend said he found a couple of tracks and took a couple of pictures. I'm not sure, I don't know. He showed me a couple of pictures. I'm not positive. But so my friend thinks that they probably travel along that creek, which makes sense. There's trees, it's tree lined. So, and it's through country, it's through farmland, and there would be plenty of animals out that direction. And the creeks would have fish, of course, and all that. So it makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, it really does. And they are so elusive. Even if they are in an area, most of the time they're not seen. And if they are, it's like your situation where it's not definitive. If that's what you actually saw, there's a brief moment that you see uh, something, and you just have to put two and two together. Eventually, it adds up to people. But so many people have some type of an unusual sighting like that, and then they don't really realize what they saw until many years later.
Right. Yeah.
What do you think they are?
I think they're close to human. This is just what I think after everything I've heard and things I've read. I think they're close to human, but still more like a caveman type animal or person, or I don't know, human. Um, you know, evolution stuff. I don't know about all that. I just, because it doesn't make sense to me, like many people have said that if we're actually really descendant of gorillas and different primates, why aren't there still those, why aren't there still in between stages? I just don't get all that. But I'm wondering if the Bigfoot creatures are something slightly kin to us. I have to think they probably are, especially the ones where people say they have more of a human looking face. I have to think they're probably kin to us and just
Oh,
never evolved into the way we look.
yeah, and they remained in nature, which
Right,
would
where they
definitely.
need to be hairy and they need to be dark and they need to be have the skills they have. They need to have that bigger body and be as quick and all that as they are. Yeah, I just think that they stayed in places where they needed to be what they are. So they stayed what they are. Whereas our relatives moved and didn't need things anymore. So if it is, if evolution is true and we came from those, which I have to think it's true. Plus, I know that also, like with 21andMe, supposedly they can tell you if you're, or used to before they went out of business, could tell you if your DNA linked up with Neanderthals, I believe. So, we have to be kin if that's true.
Yeah, that's agree. There could be some real connection and I think when people see them and they do have such a resemblance to a lot of human behavior and human likeness. But most of the time, when someone has an opportunity to see them in daylight, see the face up close enough to see the expressions on the face and the eyes, they said, "My goodness, they were just so humanistic. It was just it's amazing what they look like."
I wish so badly that I had seen a face, even if it was just to tell me that what I saw was just a human being standing there. I wish so badly I'd seen a face. If it was a Bigfoot juvenile, I wish I'd seen it. Then I'd know. I'll never know. So I feel like a not a failure. I feel like a wannabe or something, and I'm not. I'm not a wannabe. But that's what it feels like when somebody talks to me about this story because I have no idea if that's what I saw or wasn't what I saw. But
Did
I
you ever
believe I believe it probably was, but I don't know and I'll never get to know.
Do you ever did you ever have the thought to maybe just go out there and sit and wait and research anymore to see if you could see it again?
Actually, yes, now. I mean, because used to I would have been afraid to go out by myself like that. I'm not afraid of it because I know there's a possibility there are bad ones that might do something to a woman that was out there by herself, even kidnap her. But yeah, I've thought of it. I now live in Florida, okay? So I don't live anywhere near there. But I did go to the cemetery that one time with the people I was talking about, but it was broad daylight. And they were actually out, doing their own thing, filming and stuff. So I didn't go out there with them, and I guess I would have been in the way too. But I've offered many times to them and to other friends that I know that do go out and do research, take me out. I know I could easily sit quietly and I wouldn't be a problem. But they don't know that. But I've thought about going by myself out to that same place.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see. I mean, we don't know the longevity of a Bigfoot or how old maybe that one was, but um, they might still be there.
Right? The same one could be there. Or they may have long moved on. There may be none of them living there anymore. Or maybe they come and go. I don't know. Maybe none of those relatives are alive. We don't know. But I imagine and it appears, all I saw was the head. So I don't know that the person or animal stood directly all the way up. I don't know that for a fact because there was grass. But if he did, he was about the same height as me or she. So I would assume if it was a Bigfoot, that was a young one, which I would assume it was probably a teenage, one. And I would assume that they lived to be our age or who knows more. Who knows though? We don't know if they have, if their lifespan's less. We don't know. But that the fact that he could still live there, there's still that possibility. It's still country out there. There's still just trees lining that creek. Yeah, I'm going for a class reunion in the area next April, and I think I'm going to have to go out there
Well,
because
we expect a
because it's
second.
so far away. I think I'm going to have to go out there while I'm in town.
Yeah, that would be really interesting. Absolutely, it would. So other than going to that one state park with that group, have you ever been just out on a Bigfoot research trip, a camping trip or anything?
No, never.
No.
Yeah, the time that in the park I stayed. We got there on a Thursday, I think. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and left Sunday. So I was camping out in that park in the same area where my friend said he had his incident happen. And then we traveled away from the park and went to that cemetery to just go check out where I had seen what I'd seen. Um, no, I've never gone with anybody else. That was the only time. And that wasn't really an expedition. That was really just a let's all meet at the park and this is where this happened to me and we're going to film around this area. But it wasn't really going out and doing research. But I would be glad to.
Have you ever heard of the Sierra Sounds, the recordings by Ron Moorhead?
What's funny is, it had been years and years and years since that had happened to me. And I forgot about this part too. A friend of mine that I actually went to school with in my hometown was friends with me on Facebook. And he kept mentioning off and on stuff about Bigfoot things. So I contacted him and I said, I'm going to tell you, this is what happened to me. And I don't know if it was Bigfoot or not, but now I find out that you're actually doing research in the park and I'd like to do it with you sometimes. So we kind of had a plan to get together and I was going to go camping for a couple of days with him and his wife. It just never happened. But what was your original question? Because I think I went off
Oh,
on.
yeah, the Sierra Sounds. Have you ever heard the
Oh,
Sierra Sounds?
yes. So yeah. So anyway, this friend of mine had a CD of that. I'd never heard it. I don't think I'd even ever heard of it at the time. So this was probably about 11 or 12 years ago. And he gave me that CD and I listened to it. And I've actually communicated with Ron Moorhead, by the way, because he had his email address on that CD box. And so I emailed him and we used to communicate. And I told him about my little incident and how it was no big deal, but that that sparked my interest and everything. And I told him I got your CD, and man, it was really cool. It was amazing to me. I still have that CD, by the way.
Yeah, those are amazing sounds.
Yes. And just the whole stories. I asked him questions. I asked Ron Moorhead some questions here and there. And I told him, if you ever want to take a blonde girl out sometime and use her as bait, I'll go with you. I'll sit quietly and you guys can do what you need to do, and I'll just sit there. And he said he actually took his daughter and her friend out because his daughter wanted to. And they sat by themselves. And he said his daughter had one of them come and pop out from behind a tree and show himself to her. And he said, they won't hardly ever do that with the guys, but they'll do it with women. He said the first time she goes out and one showed himself to her.
Yeah, that's true. I've heard that before, that women and children, they'll show themselves.
Yeah, I'd be interested in doing that.
Have you heard of the places that they have habitual like clans of Bigfoot on property, and people actually kind of become friends sort of with it?
Yes, I've read and heard lots of stories on YouTube about that.
So the one you saw was a juvenile. You didn't feel any kind of fear or intimidation from this one?
It was such a brief second. I don't think I would have had time. And, because as soon as he saw me and I saw him, he jumped down and ran. So no, I didn't even have any idea I should be afraid, except that, well, be afraid of a human being who might pop up and be staring at you, thinking that you don't, doing it incognito. You should be afraid of a human being, spying on you, no telling what that person might be like. But no, it was just such a split second. I didn't have that. No.
So if a person were to be in a similar situation today, and a similar situation happened, what would you advise them to do differently than you did?
Dang. I've thought about that before. First of all, nowadays I'd be aware that that's a possibility, that that's a true thing that could actually happen. I wasn't really back then. So I'd be completely different. But if you were out in an area and you knew there's a possibility that there may be Bigfoot creatures somewhere, and that's what you're wanting to do. If you see something, I don't know if you should try to speak out loud. Like when he was running, maybe I should say, "It's okay. I'm not here to harm you. Let's be friends." I don't know, but I probably would have tried to communicate or something. Even if it was when he was running off, I might have said, "Hey, it's okay." I don't know. It was just such a brief thing, that I wasn't thinking.
Did you have a flashlight in your hand when you were out?
I didn't have one with me. No. But I had a light behind me where I could barely see, but I could see the top of that grass, a little bit. I can't even tell you if it was the top of the grass I could see it, or if it was like maybe in the middle of the grass. Anyway, I could see a little bit of light in that grass. So that's the light I had. And I was just waiting on the rest of them to come down. And I don't even know how many people had flashlights. I don't remember. I do know we had one because we were looking at the dates on the tombstones.
Yeah, because if you would have had a flashlight in your hand and
Then I would have
shined it immediately, then
I'd have picked
would
it
be
up
great.
and put it in his face, I guess, if I could quick enough so I could get a good look at it.
There were no grunts or howls or knocks or anything like that you noticed.
Nothing that I noticed. No.
Just running off and that brush moving.
Yes.
Yeah, they make some pretty ferocious sounds, I've heard, as they're running away, because they're so heavy for one thing, but also they can just move so fast through that heavy brush.
I just heard like the brush crashing, like if you were to just be running into it. That's what I heard. I don't remember any loud thuds or anything like that.
This one probably wasn't large enough to create like some of them. I've heard that as they move, literally you could feel the earth kind of shake a little bit, just a real
Right.
real kind of heavy sound. But this one probably wasn't heavy enough if it wasn't.
I doubt it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I guess you've heard of the structures and things like that. Have you ever seen any of those that the X's and the structures that they potentially built?
I've been out in woods since then and seen, fallen trees and things, but I never related it as being structures of any sort. But back when I had been out and had seen things like that, I hadn't really listened to stories on YouTube and stuff where people talk about that. So I wouldn't have been looking for it.
Sure. Yeah, I understand that. A lot of people report some unusual activity like orbs and things. Have you ever seen anything like that?
No, ma'am.
UFOs or anything?
Well, a couple of times when I was a kid, we saw lights that seemed like they shouldn't be able to move like that, but that's about it. And it was in the distance. But like where you see something go up and maybe go over, go down, things like that. I only saw a couple of times like out. So where I lived, I told you it was kind of a small town. There weren't that many lights anyway. But if you went out of town, it was really dark. So a couple of times when I was out where it was really dark, I saw lights like that. But that's it. I've never seen anything in any woods or anything like that. Now,
So
some other people in Davis had seen some what they thought was UFOs, kind of out in the same area where I was, but all I saw was a light that moved in a kind of a funny way. I heard stories about a particular person that said they saw one land. Don't know.
yeah. Well, there are some reports about some of the craft or orbs and things like that around the same areas where Bigfoot is seen or found. But I didn't know if in that area where you grew up, if there was a lot of reports of UFOs or not.
I wouldn't say a lot, just a few, but not in that particular area where I'm talking about the cemetery and then the park and stuff. But we live by some small Oklahoma mountains, so it's not really mountains, but it's tall hills. But they look like mountains to us, and they're called mountains. The name's mountain. But in around those mountains, there were a few stories. Whether they were true or not, I can't tell you, but there were a few stories of people having seen some kind of craft in the distance, or like this one particular person said they saw one landed.
There's a lot of legend around Native Americans and the Bigfoot relationship. Have you heard anything about that from that area?
About the what?
Native Americans and the
Oh,
legends that they have about the
oh, the Native Americans being, see, now that I know that now. I didn't know that back then, and I didn't really hear stories like that. But the whole story was about a old monkey, and I keep saying lady, but it's woman. That's what they called her. The old monkey woman. That was a Native American cemetery. So they may relate somehow. Maybe if she was real, maybe she really was trying to watch out for the cemetery because of the relationship between her people and the Native Americans that lived in that area. Because that little area, there were like the church was there, and it was a Native American church. I don't know if anybody else was. I imagine other people could go to that church by the time I knew about it, but maybe back in the day when that church was built, it was all Native American people living right in that small area, and maybe they had a relationship with them because that creek was not that far from the cemetery. The creek's not very far at all, actually, from what I'm talking about. Um, that's the only relationship I thought of later was maybe it makes sense that this old monkey woman, was protecting the cemetery.
Yeah, and if there was a little creek there or whatever, oftentimes Bigfoot does seem to follow waterways, and if there's a creek there on top of that, it just makes sense that they might be there.
For two reasons. Because there are trees, thick trees lining the creek. So if you're going to walk from point A, which is say it's 5 miles away, to point B over here at the cemetery, you're going to need some kind of protection from human beings seeing you. So trees, I mean, that makes sense. First of all, it's just a hidden way to walk. The second thing is water. Everybody needs water. Animals need water. People need water. Bigfoot would need water. There's water. And another thing, the animals need water. So the animals are going to be following where water is too. So if they're looking for food, they're going to be able to find animals getting water, fish in the water. So that all makes sense.
It does. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, it's interesting that this was an old Native American cemetery. There's an old Native American church there, and that this Bigfoot, potentially a Bigfoot, was maybe protecting that. I would love to have known the story about the person who reported this to your brother, that there was an old monkey woman protecting the cemetery. Interesting that they saw them as a protective.
And and I'm going to do more research and try to find out who that person was because we all knew each other. So there's no way that this person who told my brother that story, there's no way that that's a person I didn't know. I just don't remember who he said it was. So you got to be careful though when you're asking the questions. Some people just still make fun of me, and that's okay. I don't care. People like to make fun of me for asking about Bigfoot. I asked couple of years ago. Do you know anybody? Asked us, I said, yes, before you asked me the question, yes, I believe in Bigfoot. Okay. Does anybody out there know someone who's had what they thought was Bigfoot on their property and would allow somebody to come on their property and do some research? And I got all the jokes. Never had one person say, oh, yes, you can come on my property. I've had Bigfoot. Had people say, oh, I've heard of somebody that said that they had Bigfoot on their property and it was so and so's cousin or whatever. And then I tried to get, contact with the cousin, never did. But the person who told my brother about the old monkey woman has to be somebody I know. So I would love to find out who it was so I could ask questions. It really bothers me. I don't even know if they're still alive because many of my friends have, people I've known and grew up with deceased. But I sure would like to find that out who that person was so I could ask questions.
Yeah, that would be maybe some pieces of a missing puzzle there.
Oh, yeah. I think big missing pieces.
Oh, that would be great. I hope you do find them. Is there anything else you want our audience to know about your experience or anyone else's experience with Bigfoot?
My experience wasn't much, and I to this day don't know what I saw or who I saw or whatever. But I would have to say, because I know a handful of people that have seen a Bigfoot creature that I believe. I know these people personally and I believe them because I know them. But I would have to say, don't discount what you saw. What you saw is what you saw. And if you truly saw a creature covered in hair or whatever, don't listen to all of the naysayers. Don't listen and don't give in to they're going to try to make fun of you. Don't give in to that. Who cares? You know what you saw. You know what you saw. You know what you didn't see. You know what you saw. You know what you didn't see. And you don't have to make it any more than what it was. And who cares if your best friend doesn't even believe you? Oh, well, you know what you saw.
Absolutely. I totally can appreciate that. Well, Beth, I want to say thank you for being on the show. I really appreciate you being here. And I also want to thank the audience for watching the show and ask if you would please like, share, and subscribe. Subscribe because it keeps our channel going and it doesn't cost you anything at all to just help us keep everything going. Thank you so much, Beth.
Can I say one thing
Absolutely.
before you go? If the person who talked to my brother Mark and told him the story about the old monkey woman is out there and you hear this, you know who I am. Please find me on Facebook and let's talk.
Sounds good to me. And let me know what you hear.
I will.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.